Hello, I'm not Scott Manley. No, I am not the great man. I am just the low man, and I'm here with my first ever video tutorial for Kerbal Space Program. In this video, I'm going to show you how to get to Duna. Now, this seems to be a question that pops up fairly regularly on the forums. New players learn how to get to orbit, they visit the Mun, maybe they go to Minmus, and after that, they want to go to interplanetary. Hopefully by the end of the video, you'll understand how to do that. Now, the first thing you need to understand when going to other planets is the concept of a transfer window. Unlike the Mun, where you can just jet off from Kerbal orbit at any time and spend roughly the same amount of energy to get there, the amount of energy you need to spend to get to the planets varies drastically depending on where they are in their orbit compared to where you are in the orbit of the planet you're leaving from, which is obviously normally going to be Kerbin. And the time when it is most energy efficient to travel from one planet to another planet is called the transfer window. Now, I use an awesome mod to work that out. Transfer window planner does what it says on the tin. This is going to tell us when we need to depart Kerbin, how much delta V we need to spend to get from Kerbin to the other planet, and also how much delta V we need to spend to capture into orbit at the other planet. Fairly simple to use. Set your origin, Kerbin. Set your destination, Duna. I'm going to set the orbits, although that doesn't matter hugely. And I'm going to hit the plot it button. Now, what we get here is known as a pork chop plot, obviously named by a hungry rocket scientist. It's a heat map of energy requirements. It has the departure date, so the time of launch along the x-axis. It has the travel time along the y-axis, and the heat represents how much delta V is required to intercept with Duna's orbit from Kerbin at that particular departure date. As you can see, it varies, like I said, drastically from the most efficient, which is 1698 delta V, right up to 2100 or more delta V. Obviously, you're not going to spend that much delta V. You're going to do it at the most energy efficient time. Now, that 1698 delta V is made up of two components, as I said. We have an initial ejection burn that we're going to do from orbit in Kerbin. That's going to cost us 1049 delta V. And then once we intercept with Duna, we are going to then need to use another 649 delta V to burn into the Duna orbit. Fantastic thing about Transfer Window Planner is you can take all this information, most particularly the date of departure, and you can copy it straight into Kerbal Alarm Clock, another fantastic mod, which we're going to do now, which helps keeps track of things like transfer windows. You can see here we've created an alarm, and you can also see that it's actually got all the detail of the burn. So now we know our transfer window details. What we then need to do is put a vessel into Kerbin orbit that has sufficient delta V to execute those maneuvers, and here's one I prepared earlier. What you might notice is there's not actually much to it. Might surprise you to learn that to get to Duna and orbit and back doesn't actually require that much more delta V than what's required to get to the Mun and back. Obviously, if you were going to land, you would need a more substantial craft than this, but for our needs, this is fine. Okay, we've reached our transfer window, and we're now going to set up the maneuver to burn to Duna. So one of the really cool features of the transfer window planner is it actually stores your eject angle as well and can display that on the map view. Blue arrow is the orbit of Kerbin around the sun. This blue line is your point of where you're going to eject from Kerbin's orbit, and the green line is the angle you will be going as you depart Kerbin's orbit, assuming you do it all correctly, of course, which will get you to Duna. So we might fast forward a little bit so we're over the line. Yep, there we go. And we will set up a maneuver node. Now this is another cool mod that I rely on a lot called Precise Node. Really helps with setting up these burns. What we're going to do is take the ejection burn information and punch it into Precise Node to set up our maneuver. So we have 1041.9 prograde delta V, and we have 121.7 normal delta V. Just a quick aside that the transfer window planner does what's called ballistic transfers, where you burn once from orbit and then you burn again once you reach your destination. They're not always the most efficient orbit. What's generally more efficient is what's called mid-course plane change, where you burn from orbit and then halfway through the journey you do a small burn to adjust your orbital plane to match the planet. The case of Duna's orbital plane isn't that much different to that of Kerbin, so a ballistic transfer is fine. Let's close that off. And we have a maneuver set up. All that remains now is to warp to the maneuver. And once we reach the maneuver, we're just going to execute it like you would if you were burning to go to the Mun. No different. You have your maneuver node on your nav ball. You have your delta V for the maneuver. That's pretty much it. And if you do it all correctly, we shall hopefully have a Duna intercept by the end of it. Alright, so we will get to our maneuver. We'll also activate our engine so that we have a burn time here. And we'll fast forward a fraction. That'll do it just fine. And then we'll start our burn. A bit of time, acceleration. Ooh, that's a bit wobbly. Not so precise, but that'll do. Slow things back down as we come to the end of our maneuver. Going to drop it down as we reach the end, so we burn nice and precisely. And we'll burn a little bit more. And that should just about do us. Let's see how we did. Alright, we didn't set Duna as a target. Let's do that now. And, drats, we didn't quite get the intercept on the first burn. Don't panic if this happens to you. You're very unlikely to precisely execute the burn anyway, unless you're using something like MechJeb. So what we are going to do, we're pretty close, 73 million. I don't know why you have this flickering, sometimes we're intercepting and sometimes we're not. Hopefully they fix that in the next patch. Alright, to refine our orbit so we actually get an intercept, what we're going to do is I've zoomed out here and about halfway, it's not really important, but around halfway through our journey, I'm going to add another maneuver node. And we're then going to give that a little bit of a tweak and see if we can't refine the intercept. Oh, there we go. And get... Okay, so I have an intercept there. So now I'm going to focus on Duna so I can see where we're intercepting. So I can see we're up here. And now again, this is where Precise Node is really helpful. You can use just a click to give you a little bit of extra prograde or less. And we're just going to refine that in a little bit of anti-normal, and where the orbit disappears. Until we have a nice close approach. That's pretty good. Maybe a little bit further. 26,000. Oh, no. Don't go into the atmosphere. Then you're going to have a bad day. Yeah, we'll take that. Okay, and just for the sake of convenience, I'm going to add an alarm to Kerbal alarm clock for that particular maneuver. And then we'll fast forward to the maneuver. Okay, so we have come up to our mid-course maneuver where we're going to refine our intercept. So the intercept is nice and close to Duna. Close that alarm. And again, like any maneuver, first you're going to point to the maneuver marker. Now, because this maneuver needs to be pretty precise and only uses a small amount of delta V, what I'm going to do is go and reduce thrust or lower the thrust limiter on the main motor. That's going to allow me to be more precise in this burn. Now I'll fast forward a little bit. Not too important to execute it right on the maneuver node, but we will this particular time. That's good enough. Hopefully we should see our intercept pop in a second. There it is. Nice. Drop the thrust down to... Oop, there we go. And we completely lost our maneuver node while I was paying attention to the delta V. Okay, let's find it again. Bring it up. What do we got? 113. Let's bring it up a little bit more. There, I'll take that. Yeah, looks good. While we're here, we might as well add our insertion burn. Now, if you recall from the alarm, transfer window planner said it would take about 650 delta V in order to capture our cells into Duna orbit. And yeah, it's about that much. And we might as well add an alarm for that. And we'll fast forward till we get to Duna. Okay, we have reached Duna orbit, and there it is off in the distance. Well, a lot less distance than it was when we first started. Now we have our maneuver node to do our insertion burn set up, so we're going to fast forward to that as Duna gets ever closer. By the way, I'm running SVE as I think it's stock visual enhancements. Great mod to add a bit of color or interest to the planets. It is reasonably graphics intensive, but I'm not running a particularly high-end system and it runs fine for me. Alright, hello Duna. Just take a moment to admire the majesty there. That's pretty good. Alright. Insertion burn. Now, before we do this, don't forget to take off our thrust limiter, otherwise we were going to be burning for far too long. Just accelerate a little bit. And that'll do it. Going to point to our maneuver, and off we go. Now, as we burn retrograde, our orbit slows down and gets more and more affected by the gravity of Duna, as you can see there, till eventually we're captured. Just lower our apo a little bit. Oh, hello Ike. And boom, we are now in a pretty good Duna orbit. There we go. Take a spacewalk, Jeb. Not bad, huh? Alright, so as promised, we have shown you how to use the transfer window planner to find your transfer window. We have executed our ejection burn. We have got a Duna intercept, and we did an insertion burn to get to Duna. Hope that all made sense. Now, obviously, going in the reverse direction, which most of you will want to do at some point, is just a case of doing the same thing in reverse. You would pull up the transfer window planner, set the origin as Duna, set the destination as Kerbin, and then you would plot it. And you can see here, takes about the same delta V as you would expect. Ejection is 645 delta V, and insertion is about 1000 delta V. Now in this case, I don't have that much delta V, but what I do have is a heat shield. So I would have the option of, instead of doing an insertion burn, is just actually plowing into Kerbin's atmosphere to slow down, and then in that case all I would need to do is spend the 644 delta V to get from Duna to Kerbin. Okay, I hope that all makes sense. If you enjoyed this, let me know. If you think that I've left some stuff out, please also let me know. And thank you very much for watching. Bye.